So in this video, we're talking about strategies we're going to use to solve questions like this, multi-step worded problems involving fractions. So in this question, we have Zoe and she bought some oranges. She gave half of the number of them to her brother, then a quarter of the remainder to her sister, 3/5 of those left to her cousins, and she had 6 left in the end. The question is asking you to find how many oranges did she buy at the beginning. Okay, now the solution that you're seeing here, 99% of teachers and tutors in school or in lessons use this method. All right, even I use it, okay, but depending on the student. Now some students could quickly pull the information out from questions like these and do the calculations as shown here. A brother gets a half, the remainder is 1 minus a half, which is a half. The sister then gets a quarter of that half, of that remainder, and which is 1/8. What was left after she gave her sister is 3/4 of a half, which is 3/8. Now her cousins will get 3/5 of what was left, 3/5 of 3/8, which is 9 out of 40. And what was left was 2/5 of 3/8, which is 6 over 40, or if I reduce this to make the number smaller to work with, by dividing by 2, the numerator and the denominator by 2, I will get 3 out of 20 parts. And this 3 out of 20 parts represents 6 oranges according to the question. Alright, she had 6 left. So 1 out of the 20 parts would be represented by 2 oranges. Okay, and then we find for the whole, which is 2 by 20 parts, and the answer is 40 oranges. So 40 oranges is what Zoe would have at the beginning. This is what she bought. Now, some students don't understand this method. Even if they understand it now, when they try to apply it to another question with in a different scenario with different fractions, they get lost. So I'm going to show you 3 other ways that students could approach this question. And if your child is fine with this method and can work the question like this, there is no need to confuse them with the other strategies. Okay, so let's take a look at the first strategy. So the first strategy is what I like to call creating branches of a tree. So how this is going to look is that we're going to be starting from one point and then branching off into the parts that that point was shared into. Alright, so let's start. We're also going to be ticking off things that we use as we go along to keep track of what was used and what still needs to be used in the question. Alright, so our starting point, as with any question, is looking at our whole, because we're dealing with fractions and we know that fractions are a part of a whole. So our whole here is the oranges that Zoe bought. So our whole would be Zoe's oranges. Okay, and this is our whole. This is what we want to find in the question. Okay, so now we're going to branch off from that and we're going to split it into the parts that it was shared into. So we use this, right? She gave half the number of them to her brother. So first we're going to put in the words and then we're going to put in the numbers after. So one part was given to her brother. Alright, if she gave some to her brother, she would have some remained. Okay, so this first initial splitting, right, or the sharing, was between her brother and what was left. Okay, the remainder. Now the remainder was shared between her sister and some amount that was left. Okay, so it's not her brother doing the sharing, right? The sharing came from what was the remainder. So sister. Alright, sister, and they said some was left. Alright, left. So the part that was left now, So her sister is not going to be sharing anything, right? The part that was left was shared between her cousins. So the first part will be cousins. And then they said they had some left. So she had some left again. Alright. So this is, do we need to put anything else? No. Alright. So this is what our tree and our branches would look like. So the path that would lead us to our solution would be this piece here. See this 6 left? Alright, that left, that is the 6 here. Now this 6 is going to help us determine our whole. Alright, so from here, what we need to work out is this path here. Okay. Alright, so let's put in the fractions now. So the number she gave to her brother is a half. Okay, a half. The other part of that whole is a half. The remainder would be a half as well, right? So this half and this half make a whole. Now this half here is split again. It is split into, so we use this half, right? Quarter comes next. The quarter goes with the sister. A quarter of what? A quarter of the remainder. So the remainder is a half. So a quarter of a half. Alright. Now we don't need to work this out, okay? Because this is not on the path to figuring out what the whole is. Alright. So what is this part here? What is this fraction here? That a quarter and what fraction will make a whole? That will be 3/4, right? So this 3/4 and a quarter would make a whole again. Alright, so you need to make sure that your branches, okay, add up back to one whole. So this 3/4, the amount that was left from the whole amount of oranges here at the start of our tree is 3/4 of the remainder. Alright, now this we need to work out. 3 multiplied by 1 is 3. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8. Alright, so this here now, we're going to split, this is split into 2 parts again. So, cousins, so we use 3/5. No, so we need to use 3/5 now, right? So 3/5 of those left was to her cousins. So 3/5. 3/5 of means to multiply, of what? What was left. And what was left is 3/8 of the whole. Okay, now we don't need to work this out because this is not on the path again to getting the answer. It is important because we need to know the fraction here. If 3/5 went this way, then the amount to make a whole would be 2/5. Okay, let me put this 2/5 here. 2/5. Alright, so this is 2/5. 2/5 of how much? Well, if we look right back here, it's 2/5 of 3/8. Okay, so let's work this out. 2/5 of 3/8. 2 multiplied by 3 will give me 6. And 8 5s are 40. Now, from equivalent fractions, I could see that I could reduce this here. So I'm going to reduce it by dividing the top and the bottom by 2. Because I want smaller numbers to work with. Alright, so this will give me 3/20. Now, remember the 6? Okay, if you look back, we didn't use this 6 yet in any calculation. Alright, we used this 3/5. So let's use this 6 now. This 3 out of 20 parts represents 6 oranges. Because it told us that is how much was left. So if 3 parts represent 6 oranges, then 1 part would represent 6 divided by 3 to give you 2 oranges. Okay, and our whole would be 20 out of 20 parts, and this would be 2 oranges by 20 to give us the same 40 oranges that we saw in the previous working. Okay, so here's our solution, 40 oranges. All right, so this is one way for students to be able to translate these words and the fractions, okay, and to see what path we need to use to work out the question. So let's look at the second strategy. Now the second strategy is one that I have been using frequently in my previous videos, so you can feel free to take a look at those videos. I will leave a link in the description box below to one of the questions where I explain a little more in detail about what bar modeling is and why we use it. Okay, so in this question again, we're gonna start first with identifying our whole. So our whole is the oranges that Zoe bought. So we're gonna use one big bar to represent our whole, right? Whole. Right, so we have our whole bar there. The next thing now they said is that a half of them went to her brother. So let's split this into two pieces, into halves. All right, and this half went to her brother. All right, the remainder, a quarter of the remainder, to her sister. So this piece here is the remainder. All right, let me use a different color. This here is the remainder, and the remainder is also a half. All right, but now we're splitting this half into quarters. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 parts, and one out of those 4 parts, or a quarter, went to her sister. Okay, now, so we use that half, and we use this quarter here. So now let's look at what was left. Okay, so what was left is this piece here, which is 3 out of 4 parts, or 3 quarters, and it is 3 quarters of 1/2, which is 3/8. All right, so now this here becomes 3/8. Now from this 3/8, what is shared is that 3/5 of those left went to her cousins. So her cousins from this 3/8, they got 3/5 of what was left. 3/5 of that 3/8, okay, which will give you 9/40. Now if the cousins got 3/5, it means that what was left after she gave her cousins, the fraction that was left is 2/5, because 3/5 plus 2/5 give us a whole, and this is 2/5 of that 3/8, okay, which is 6/40. And then I will want to reduce this, all right, to make it simpler to use, and this will give me 3. I'm dividing by 2, 3/20. All right, now we use this. Now we have this 6 to use in our calculations. Now they said that she had 6 left in the end. So this means that this 3/20 represents 6 oranges. And again, just like the previous question, we're going to find for one part, which is 6 divided by 3, to give me 2 oranges. And then the whole, which is 20 out of 20, would be 2 by 20, which will give me 40 oranges. All right, so let's suppose that the student don't understand how we get this part. What you would do now is draw a bar with 20 parts in it and shade 3, and this would represent 6. So the student will be able to see that 3 bars represent 6. So then 1 bar will be 6 divided by 3, which is what we did here. Okay, now for a standard 5 student that will be ready to write essay, these concepts should have been exhausted at standard 4 and standard 3. Okay, so drawing a bar here with 20 parts is not something that a standard 5 should be doing at this point. Okay, so but this part here, all right, this here is acceptable. to see what we need to do and how the fractions are shaped. So let's take a look at the third strategy. So in this strategy, we're going to be working in reverse with some use of bar models. Okay, so it's a kind of combination. So in the previous two strategies, right, we started with the whole. We identified what was the whole at the beginning. But now we're going to look at what was left and then work our way backwards. So what was left, we would take the last bit of that question, this piece here. Now it says 3/5 of those left went to her cousins, and she had 6 left in the end. So let's draw a bar to represent fifths. Alright, so our whole will be split into fifths. Why fifths? Because our denominator here tells us how many pieces our whole is broken up into. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is supposed to be looking like 5 equal portions there, right? So this represents what? Well, 3 out of 5 parts represents what was given to her cousins, right? So what was left here, this piece here, is the 2/5. And this 2/5 of all the oranges, alright, is represented by 6. Okay, so if 2/5 of all the oranges is 6, then what is 1/5? Well, 1/5 will just be 6 divided by 2, which is equal to 3. So 3 oranges is 1/5. Okay, so the whole, right, the whole amount, what was left, okay, is 3 multiplied by 5 will give me 15 oranges. Alright, so 15 oranges is what was left, this left here. Okay, so we use this. So let's look at the next section. The next section is 1/4 of the remainder to her sister. Alright, so 1/4 of the remainder. So let's draw a bar with 4 parts in it. And why 4? Because we're dealing with 1/4, and the denominator is 4. And that tells us how many parts our bar was split into, our whole. So they said 1 of this quarter went to her sister. And the remainder is obviously 3/4. Alright. Right, so what is this 3/4 of? Okay, so let's see what is this 3/4 of. This 3/4 is of the half. Alright, so the half. So if she gave away half to her brother, then the remainder, which is this here, this is the remainder, alright, is 3/4 of a half. And this will give me 3/8. Alright, and this 3/8 represents what? The 15 oranges. Okay, so now we have 3/8 representing 15 oranges of the whole. So what is the whole? So I'm gonna go a little step again and draw a bar with 8 oranges. 8 parts. Alright, and 3/8 is equal to 15. So we need to find the whole. Alright, so 1/8 will be equal to 15 divided by 3, alright, which will give me 5. So each part here of the whole, so this here now is our whole, right, what we want to find. Each piece here is 5. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. Alright, so our whole, which is 8 out of 8, is equal to 5 by 8, which is 40 oranges. Alright, so in this strategy we worked in reverse Alright, we started with what was left, and we use some bar models too to help us decide, just help us see as a visual aid the fractions that were left and what was used. Okay, so after you found your final answer, it's wise to, if you have time in the exam, to do a quick check to make sure that your answer makes sense. Alright, so what we're going to do is take this value, 40 oranges, and I'm going to put it back into here. Alright, put it here, and then we're going to add up all the oranges and make sure that our answer is 40. Alright, now you can put it into any one of the strategies we used. Alright, I'm going to use this one here. So her total amount, so we established that our whole was 40 oranges. Okay, now she gave her brother a half. A half of 40 is 20 oranges. Alright, so this means that the remainder, 40 minus 20, right? 40 minus 20 is 20 oranges. Alright, so this 20 oranges, her sister gets 1/4. So from this 20, so let me circle this, right? So we need to add this question, that answer back, right? So from this 20, the sister gets 1/4 of it. So 1/4 of 20 will give me 5 oranges. Alright, so we need to add this. Now what was left would be the 20 minus 5 to give you 15 oranges. Now this 15 oranges again was shared between the cousin and what was left. So the cousin gets 3/5 of 15. Right? And this will give me 5 into 5 is 1, 5 into 15 is 3, 3 threes are 9, so 9 oranges. And then what was left is the 6 oranges here. So go ahead, add your 20, your 5, your 9, and this 6, and you would see that you get 40 oranges. Alright, so this is one way to ensure that your final answer is correct. Okay, if you do get something other than 40, you may have made a calculation error somewhere. Okay, so go back and check. Practice some of these questions with any one of these strategies and see which strategy you are more comfortable with, which one would help you understand how to approach the question, and leave a comment below and let me know which one you find was easier to work with, what strategy you will be sticking with, and I'll see you in the next video.